I was asked, why is it that some people prefer to be dominated, controlled by others, or would even engage in dangerous practices when it comes to sex and things like that? And I had to think quite a bit on this because such a question can, well, have multiple possible answers. And providing a short answer without having to lengthen it for 1 hour or more, well, requires quite some precision. So when it comes to such kind of people, it can be possibly anything from certain mommy daddy issues, abandonment, or things like that, or lack of a stability, lack of a boundary. But this also stems, especially in people who are more or less genuinely interested in a relationship. Such aspects, though many look at those as extreme, and when you look at many women, it's common psychology that they more or less all crave such things, but they will be too shy to speak about, or they will think that others will think about these wild aspects as extreme. See, the necessity for this stems more or less as a natural aspect of the human psyche. It is an aspect of exploration. But what I have observed through my consciousness, well, let's say study of how it functions within humans, is that it is a boundary seeking. It is something that women tend, and not just them, but it is something, a tendency that can also be bolstered by a necessity to find a, um, what do you humans call that term? An escape out of a certain situation. See, when people are disconnected from their inner child, yes, they will look cold, bored, tired. Nothing interests them anymore because the whole point of life is being in tune with your inner child. Without that attunement, you are simply living the life of a robot, of a machine, a life where there is literally no wonder. Where there is no wonder, there is no interest in studying that because life no longer feels colorful. Life no longer feels vibrant like it used to be when one was a child. Yes? When people disconnect from this, life feels simply worthless. And obviously, the life that is not examined is not, feeling too worthy of living. Yes? Nowadays, you see most people being zombies not because of their work, not because of their toxic environments, but because of simply being disconnected from what they are. The inner child of the feminine, of the women usually, will tend to try to experience things more from an emotional part. And the masculine part seems to tend more towards the physical aspect. Ever seen two guys hate one another, and they do so for a very long time because society deems it that masculine rage and physical impacts and them fighting one another is something wrong and bad, because that's, well, another sick way of society of making men weak. Because when men are weak, nobody is going to fight to protect women. Women will feel defenseless, and hence feminism in its aggressive nature can easily overwhelm their minds. Yes, it is common psychology that usually women tend to be a bit more susceptible to, uh, you know, manipulations of the mind, because it's much easier to make a woman feel safe in certain words than usually to make a man. Yes, the men are more centered within their mind, while women should be more centered in their emotion and their intuition. Obviously, these are not necessarily rules. When it comes to people and how they wish to experience life, these are usually tendencies. But a man who becomes, or person who becomes full, is someone who embraces both their masculine and their feminine, both their intuition, emotion, as well as their physicality, their strength, and such. When it comes to people trying these so-called extreme behaviors or things like that. See, look at how two men fight. Yes, they have a hatred. Yes, it sparks up. Men simply build their boundaries by physicality. Once those two men fight one another, one will be defeated usually, or is a stalemate, and typically they will draw a very careful line. Yes, one will be the victor, the other one will not, or both will stand out because maybe they have the same strengths, or they realize fighting one another is not worth it. They will either uh, well, they will either hate one another still, or, well, they will actually keep a wall, like a very great boundary. They're not going to look at one another probably, or things like that, or they will become the best friends. Yes? With me, women, it will usually be worse in a way because the similar may happen, but the grudges will be real. Yes? Especially the less a woman is in tune with her emotions, the stronger her grudges will be, and the necessity for a grudge. Yes? When women tend to these, what others may call extreme, BDSM fantasies and things like that, those are not necessarily something extreme. It is extreme for people who, have given in to this pussification of humans that the sick society we live in wants. Yes, it wants complacent, stupid people. It doesn't want people to open up to all their points of views, to all their fantasies and the such. The greatest masters in the world, people who have transcended their urges and problems and fetishes and whatever not, tendencies of the body, whatever way you want to call them. Some of them were simply capable to detach from all of these, by removing the meaning. Others were simply the kind to simply bang their head against the wall until the wall broke. Yes, those were the kind who not detach from an obsession, but to simply push it to the limit until their brain literally became tired of it. Yes, it's what I call banging your head against the wall till it breaks. Yes, you don't break to the obsession. You do it until, your brain becomes too stimulated with it, or it simply no longer has any importance. Yes, and this can be with any obsession. Some may not work like this, but this is a way it can actually work, for example, with pornography. Yes, there are people who actually get rid of this obsession either because they outlive it or simply because they overdo it. They overstimulate their brain so much that everything that they watch simply no longer feels relevant. Yes, it will feel hard to remove the impulse. Yes, the momentum that has been built through investing so much time and energy. But once something is simply relevant, you'll walk away from it, more or less. Yes, and the necessity for it usually will dwindle. When it comes to primal urges, these are things that are hardwired within our conscience. These are not something that people crave just because they are obsessed with something. Maybe they can be bolstered by a necessity to escape the mundane. When it comes to modern women, a lot of expectations are on their shoulders. Yes, and she would gladly wish to find someone whom they can embrace, who can hold them in their arms, and whom they can go full retard with. Yes, that's what happens in between people who are not just friends, they're not just girlfriend, boyfriend. They are somewhat beyond that. Yes, they're not necessarily friends, but at the same time, they're not friends. Yes, they're not people who don't know one another. It usually goes that one will get to know the other one way more. Typically, things are like that, and that's usually what sets up a good relation. Because in a relationship, usually people fail either because they are too different, or in some cases, because they are too similar. When they are too similar, and I'm not talking about a hobby or having the same hobby, it's about having personalities and capabilities that are extremely similar. Both sooner or later will feel that they are not needed. Yes, a relationship that stands on, it stands on an idea of stability. Yes, usually one will be a provider, the other one will be a receiver. Typically, it's the man and the woman, respectively. But the point about this is that typically both need to feel needed. Yes, that's one of the points of a relationship. The woman also needs to feel needed. Yes, and we have to not forget that we live in a sick society where expectations exist everywhere, and each and every one of us would gladly wait to get back home and enjoy either loneliness. Yes, some people simply love being alone. They don't mind other people, but they don't mind being alone from time to time, like for example I do. Yes, I've never had much of a relationship with girls necessarily, but also I was not the kind to, um, you know, have it impossible. It's usually been them to come to me, and well, it's more like being a friendship or more like an advanced friendship rather than a relationship on its own. But not having relationships for a long time can actually do things to your brain, and it can actually make you grow wiser, and you end up looking at people less than whatever mess they are, and more or less of a lesson or a set of lessons that you can learn from. Yes, because you and the other person might end up having the same necessities, but the background is different, so there are different lessons to learn. The more such people you meet, and well, I usually have a way of piercing through some people as if they don't have any defense, and usually that rubs them off the wrong side and kind of pisses them off. But the point is, the more such people you get to study, the more such people you get to research on, you see that the different backgrounds will allow you to learn more about how the human conscience functions. And when you meet other people, you'll have higher chances of meeting people whose issues you can actually address to because you have met other experiences before or you have experienced those yourself. So when it comes to most of us, when we go home, we all want to feel less tired. We all want to feel safe and as such. And some people want to feel like that with someone else. Yes, some people are, let's call it almost carnal like that. They really want someone in their life, not necessarily to dominate them or to be dominated by them, by just the fact that there is someone there makes them feel safe. They don't need them to talk to, they don't need to be talked to, but someone being there is okay. This happens usually with wiser people or people who have a certain level of awareness, a certain level of, feeling good together and somewhat good in your skin. Yes, almost 99% of the people don't feel good in their skin. They kind of hate themselves to a certain extent, but many of them feel good enough that they won't do much self harm. Yes, we all have our little bad habits that ruin our health more or less, but the majority of people don't overdo that because they don't overly hate themselves. It's just a little bit of drama that usually agglutinates people together because when people play a bit of drama, they show themselves a bit vulnerable, which hopefully the right people will come in and will try to adjust or to help or to provide some assistance or at least some attention because we are all attention seeking animals, beings with some level of awareness because we are social beings. Yes? So when people want to remove these limitations, people want to be seen the way they are. Yes? When a woman feels hooky, the hookier she feels, she will feel a need to be more playful in a probably sexy way, in an idea of inviting you into their world, because the woman will always invite you in their own world. Yes. Well, first and foremost, they have to build a certain trust. Yes. Some women are like straightforward. They want to experience roughness. Some just want to feel safe. But what I have observed is that, well, typically women will seek to feel something stronger than them. It could be another woman in case it's a lesbian relationship, or whether they want to seek that in another woman and not necessarily be lesbians, but whatever. And others would just seek that into a man. Yes, they want to perceive the man's strengths on their own skin. And some women, many actually, will literally orgasm out of that. The big problem is how you do it as a man so that you simply don't overdo it, or overstimulate her, or simply scare her off. Because things like this, unfortunately, a lot of people will go headstrong into it, and that's not necessarily the wise part. Everything has to be done slowly with certain patience, because all that she seeks is how much she can actually trust you, because she is not necessarily interested in how much you can physically choke her, or how hard you can pull her hair, or how hard you can slap her, or do whatever she will request of you. Because, be surprised or not, a lot of women, even probably the religious ones, or the ones that look like the best daddy's daughter and the such, the most innocent looking women, will have such cravings. Yes, it is a way for them to simply experience something, and they can be bolstered by different necessities in their life. Yes, and for example, women who have had an absent father would be probably, you would expect them to be extremely into this. They would probably want to be literally punched into the face while doing intercourse, or being choked, having their hair pulled, scratching, or whatever, things like that. Because each and every one of those will serve her as an amplifier of the wounds she has felt and also ignored when she was ignored, or when she felt ignored by her father figure and maybe other previous individuals. The problem with a lot of people is, the more with some women like this, the more you invest into those fetishes of theirs, suddenly they will simply leave away, because they were interested in how complacent you are, how much you can provide for her in terms of those pains. And the problem is, well, a lot of people might think that they were not good enough. The problem was that you were probably too good. If they actually really liked it several times, they will, unfortunately, because of their missing father and or mother, they would get back, or, well, relapse into the thought, into the conviction that they'd have, and usually people with abandonment issues end up with such a conviction, that they are not good enough for people in general, or for people of the opposite gender. So it might trigger a huge fear. It might trigger the fear that she might be abandoned. And instead of taking that painful path, which most likely she has been through several times, she will try to avoid the pain of being rejected, yes, or worse than that, ghosted. Because being rejected at least comes with some reasons. The other person says some reasons, you try to play around with them or whatever, maybe you accept them or maybe you don't, but at least you are given some points of view, except, well, when you are ghosted, yes, that means the other person cuts any contacts and literally you are left in the dark. And typically that's a narcissistic behavior, but not necessarily, yes. So the point is, such people might end up juggling multiple individuals because they are lost when it comes to a certain point. All those fetishes, they are natural aspects, but they can be greatly bolstered. The necessity for those can be greatly bolstered because, more or less, it all stems from being disconnected from your inner child. And that means you are disconnected, obviously, from your emotions. When you have literally no emotion in your life will feel very pale, very stale. So everything that you will try, irrespective of how much hurt will bring, will obviously not matter much. Yes? So a lot of people will agree to go through that. One most disturbing, or not necessarily disturbing, thing that I have observed within women, and especially women with, even if they have a good awareness, yes, even if they are mature enough, maybe their esteem is not there at its peak, yes, even if it is at its peak, what a woman will generally want, even if they drag you through all their, fetishes and the such, yes, they will still stay loyal to you, but there is a big fear within them that you're not going to be strong enough. Yes, all they want you. So there are two categories in here. There are the women who feel bad for all the evils in the world, or for whatever reasons, either personal or in the whole world. and they take the blame on themselves, and they love going through such fetishes because they feel that it will be like a kind of punishment ritual, or a ritual through which they give up those things. Yes. Or some women are that, they wish to dust off the aggressiveness or the frustrations that their man has accumulated in society. Yes. And these are the kinds of women that I call the dark guardians. They are usually sensitive, they don't have much of a centeredness on their emotions, and they like drama in a way. But they're not drama queens in the regular way. They just like feeling, yes. To a woman, emotion is the most important part, or well, it should be. And so they have to embrace this idea that they gain emotion. And since in their life, usually they'll not get much emotion, they will have it that they will embrace a partner who will rough them up. They will like, for example, the corporatist man or the man who works in business and comes back home roughed up, fucked up by all sorts of meetings, calls. They're tired, they're battered, probably even angry and frustrated. And they would really want them to unleash those frustrations upon them. Imagine them being like the cat that, always crawls up to you and, sits on your lap, on your face, on your chest, depending on situation. Yes? Because cats love absorbing negative energy. They are somewhat parasitic on that, and they like humans mostly because humans are silly enough to provide negative energy just like that for free. A cat sees a human and it's like, oh, look, a generator of negative energy. So it's like, good, why not simply stand around? Because you give an animal something for free and obviously they'll stick around, because animals have to forage for their own food, whether in cats' cases energy or whether literal food. Yes? And also cats are very curious, but beyond that, And for every woman, there is also this point, this dark aspect. I call it dark, but it's not necessarily dark. But it speaks some volume that, after she drags you through all those cravings of her, through all her carousel of emotions, a journey through consciousness, as I call it, what she's actually hoping to test and find out in the end is that whatever the reason, whatever happens, you are strong enough to go along in life without her as well. Maybe she will perish. Maybe she will leave you because she's insecure or she's fed up with you. Maybe whatever the reason it is, yes, maybe she will feel ashamed or she won't feel worthy enough, or for whatever reason, you will no longer be together. Yes, she wants to feel that you are secure enough in your skin to live your life even without her. Yes, this is something that I have observed in a lot of people, and even in some people who have like a good esteem. Yes, people who are not clingy, people who are not parasitic. Even when they are clingy, I've noticed that in girls, that the more clingy they have this fear that you're not going to live well enough without them. A lot of people tell me that, women, when they are hurt, they want to hurt back. Well, that is a certain compulsion that is not necessarily specific to women. Because when you are hurt, you want to hurt yourself more, but a certain point of view in your mind will say, why hurt myself when I can hurt others and no longer feel the pain? Because if you're not empathic enough, or even if you are a highly empathic person, when you're hurt, your empathy won't necessarily function the same. It's like, why not necessarily project or actually deal the pain on the others? Yes? And well, there's a lot more to talk on this, but hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. And well, take care, enjoy life, and this being said, Ferijan Board signing out.